Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Carl. I'm your host, Carl Zoellner. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the role of an officer in a corporation. So, I know we've talked already in some previous videos about the role of a director, role of a shareholder. Today, we talk about the role of an officer. For those of you who don't know, I am Carl Zoellner. I'm one of the attorneys here with Anderson Business Advisors, and we do a ton on education. So, this is my little video section where we can talk about common issues that come up. It may seem sort of elementary that these things come up in regards to a corporation. What I would say is a lot of times it makes a ton of sense when you're sitting there listening to it, and then all of a sudden you get home, you've got to start running your business, and more questions pop up. So let's talk a little bit about that role of an officer in a corporation. So going back to our hierarchy, we've talked in previous videos about shareholder is the owner. They elect directors. Directors sort of dictate the global direction of the business. And then directors hire officers who then execute that plan and carry out the orders of the director level position. So the complexity or the confusion that usually comes in with these type of levels or these different types of positions within the corporation is, especially when you're running a small business, you can start to feel a little schizophrenic on which position you're representing at which time. So understanding sort of the boundaries that's, each position is maintaining, or what each role the positions are intended to fill, should help you understand where each side fills in. Now, with the officers, like I say, the officers are there to execute the plan that the directors approved. So once the directors give the officers their marching order, the officers are the ones that are out there shaking hands and making deals with outside third parties. Officers, like a position such as a president, have the ability to bind the corporation. However, that position does not necessarily designate that person is an owner in the corporation. Officers are traditionally employees of that corporation. So this is an answer to a lot of the questions that come through, like, okay, so if I want business cards, where do I get the business cards made? You get your business cards made in your corporation, because your corporation is your public-facing entity. And the business cards you would hand out would be for your position as an officer of that corporation. Okay? This lets the person know that you're dealing with, that you are of such a stature that you can make commitments and bind the corporation, but at the same time, you're reserving a little protection for yourself, because being a president of a corporation does not necessarily mean you are the owner of that corporation. Now, regardless if you even are the owner of that corporation, you are still protected by the corporate formalities and the differentiation between a shareholder and a corporation's debts. So I don't want to give anybody the false impression here that simply by being a shareholder and officer that you somehow no longer have protections. No, the shareholder is separate from the corporation as far as liability is concerned, even if you represent all three positions. So when I'm going out working on behalf of my corporation, I'm doing so as an officer. So I'm representing myself to the public at large as an officer. When I'm making big decisions on behalf of my corporation, I'm doing so as a director. And annually, I'm meeting as a shareholder to elect those directors of the corporation. As you can imagine, though, if there's one person, owner, director, and officer in your corporation, which is completely legal, then those meetings tend to be fairly short on who's getting elected to each position. So that gives you sort of your landscape of your corporation here. Like I say, sort of the most interactive level tends to be that officer, because you're interacting with third parties. So hopefully that helps you understand the different levels between shareholder, directors, and officers. So until next time, I want to thank everybody for joining me again for this episode of Coffee with Carl. Hopefully this helps to clarify some of those questions that are out there. Like I said, I know when you're sitting here listening, watching, it all makes 100% sense. And then when you go home and start working with it is when it tends to sort of unravel, or you have more questions. For benefits of our clients who work with us is our company assistance program, in which we'll help you with those meetings, minutes, compliance, And so a huge benefit to our clients there. If you don't have that, if you are a client and don't have that service, I would encourage you to pick it up. If you aren't a client yet and are interested in that service or some of the educational opportunities, encourage you to join us or visit us at andersonadvisors.com. Have a free consultation and see at least what we would suggest in your area. And if we're a good fit, then we'll be happy to do business with you. So until next time, thanks everybody for joining me with Coffee with Carl, and keep taking advantage of all that free content that's out there, and tell a friend if you got some time. So thank you once again, everybody, and have a good one.